Hello. What are we talking about today? The gangster baby of the Duke's family. Yeah, before we get into anything, like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't seen any of these videos before, the basic idea is I'm going to give you a general rating off the bat, and then I'll go into a little bit as to why I gave you that rating. I'm not going to spoil anything necessarily, but it'll be a little more detailed, so if you don't want to hear a single thing about this series before you read it, then you can go after the general rating. For this series, I'm going to give it a 5. It's alright. Not anything special. I'll say this, like the art's fine. Like the art's, I have no issues there, but it doesn't necessarily stand out. I guess as far as the story goes, well, it's an isekai. This character's reincarnated, of course. In her previous life, she was some sort of like secret agent or something. I don't know. It's really not that relevant. I think they're trying to make it seem like it's going to be a whole thing where she's like bossing people around and getting them to do this and that. And it's like, yeah, there's elements of that, but it's kind of loose. You know, it's there, but eh. It goes pretty generic down the route of other stories you've seen like this. I'll say this, like, this is one of those times when, like, every once in a while I read a story and it just doesn't stick. And this is one of those where, like, literally nothing is memorable. Like, none of the designs stand out to me, none of the characters stand out to me. Like, I read it, like, I had to re-up what I just read because it just, like, you go one day away from reading it and then boom, you forget everything. Like, it's just not memorable at all, really. I don't know. It's probably because of how generic it is, but yeah, gist. Reincarnated, is in a new family. She kind of, you know, she's in a family of villains. She herself isn't necessarily a villain in the original. Necessarily. Like, kinda not. And she's kind of trying to whip her family into shape, but, you know, that's the intent, but you really don't see a ton of that. It's only really with, like, one brother. And she's also trying to keep herself alive because in the original her character died at a young age. Not really going to get too much into why, you know, that's a little bit silly, but the whole, like, her dying early and how they went about it, you know, it's mildly entertaining, but it's also very, like, loose plot where it's just like, I need to get this done and I'm not really going to go into why it needs to be done or how it's going to be done. It's just kind of like, we need to get there. But anyway, let's just go through some of the characters. I don't want to go too much into, like, the actual story until maybe later, but so that's her dad. I will say, like, I think it's meant to be cutesy, of course. So, like, I don't know, she actually looks like a kid, which I guess is something different. A lot of these kind of just look like, you know, young adults, but, you know, she's actually like a kid or whatever. Her dad's pretty generic, you know, red eyes, black hair, blah blah blah, right? He's meant to be, like, nice though, and yeah, he is to a degree. So, like, I guess that's a little bit different than the typical version of this character, but if you read the series more, I'm not going to get into anything, I'm not going to get into the details of this, but basically he is, like, there's a reason, but there are two personalities here, and the one personality is it's the generic version of this character. So it really doesn't get past the generic, you know, nature of these kinds of stories, which is a little disappointing. I think if they went with just his original personality, it might be a little better, but whatever. You need conflict. There's also, you know, this is the one brother, right? White hair. You can tell what kind of character this is going to be. It is how it looks. He's very, like, stoic, has a hard time expressing emotions, things like that. Is good at most things he does, right? Generic idea. Not really anything special, and not even really that relevant. He doesn't show up as much as the other brother. This is the original heroine of the story, but of course, you know, typical with these kinds of stories, oh, she's actually not a good person. It's not a spoiler. It's so common in these stories. I don't even it's not even really worth mentioning. the only somewhat interesting aspect, and this is revealed early on, but she is also someone that went back in time. The main character is a full-on isekai, they're from a different world, but this person is like a reincarnator in this world, which is not really different, but at least, you know, trying to do something with this character. But they don't even really show up that much, they're kind of just mentioned, and that's about it. And then this is the other brother. He's like the caring slacker type brother, but they're in everything, you know, like the pretty boy slacker, and then she's really the only one that she like whips in shape, I guess, you know, tries to get him to be different and a little bit better than what the original counterpart was like. All the other ones are kind of they're there, right? They don't really do anything that I would say makes them stand out. As far as like how the story goes, I mean, it's just such a plain Jane style of story that it is hard to sit through because it's not memorable. It's not unique. I could mix this up with 27 other stories and it really wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't even realize I'm doing it. It's forgettable, plain, whatever. Of course, because it's an isekai, you know, they do the whole trope of like, oh, well, do I get anything special? Yeah, she gets this book and it kind of gives her access to, you know, information that was in the, you know, the different series, that she read in her previous life, like, you know, all the spin-offs and everything. So it gives her kind of like an idea of what's going on around her, which is fine. But it doesn't really go into anything that I would say is surprising. It doesn't really do anything unique. It's like, oh, there's a bad teacher that she has to deal with. You know, it just feels like it's hitting checks. It's like, oh, there's a bad teacher. There's a bad orphanage. Her dad has like a split personality. She has to deal with that. I've even seen that before. She has like a time limit. It's just it just feels like it's checking boxes, you know, like, oh, here's that personality type, here's that personality type. It's just going through and checking all these boxes, trying to get through the story, not really doing anything different. Just kind of, I don't know, like, I guess like a disappointing read. It really doesn't give you anything good. I don't know. It's just kind of like boring, not good. It's almost like being middle of the road is worse than being bad or good, because like if it's bad or good, at least it stands out and it's memorable, but this is so middle of the road that I can't remember it. Like you know, like you hear the story and it's like, oh, okay, there's like a bad teacher and then she solves the problem and it's like, okay, we're done. Or, you know, her brother has low self-esteem, who cares? Okay, move on. There's a semi-interesting plot point later on, but I can't really go into that without spoiling like 40 chapters, so I'm not going to go into it too in-depth. But there's a character that was, you know, put in some rather unfortunate circumstances, and, you know, how she deals with the situation and getting through it, I think is relatively interesting. I think there are problems with the stories that, like, with the story that really comes from, like, she's a little too young to be doing, like, you know, secret missions and going into these dangerous places. And there's, like, adults accompanying her in these cases, and it's like, why are they letting her do this? I don't know. I think the in-story explanation is that she has, like, a lot of mana, so she's actually, like, physically above where a person her age would be, but it's like... It's like, does that really excuse it, and does that really get you through, like, all this slog and, you know, garbage? Not really. So it ends up just kind of being mid and has story points that are kind of illogical. It's just not that good. I think if you want to just, again, I say this a lot, but if you want like a time waster, just like not bad story, it's just something that will like keep you entertained for like an hour or two, then it's not bad. But it's like if you want something that's actually like interesting and can maybe, you know, be a story that you remember and come back to in the future whenever they release more to it, then this really isn't it. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. If you have any, you know, other stories that you want me to cover, let me know below. I'd appreciate if you can like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, I mean, even if you send me a story I've already read, I'll read it again. I don't care. Who cares? I have time. Yeah, I know this is a little bit low energy, but I'll see ya.